So I think the ability to actually learn from other people, social entrepreneurs or not, gives you, I think it provides great insight, and it gives you I think you do need to have like some type of ability to do what I call rapid assessment, to basically analyze what it is, be able to kind of pick out the pieces or the prime components of what somebody's telling you that they're doing and make fairly rapid assessments of, would this work for my audience, my people? Will this not work for my audience or my people, or that middle ground? It may or may not work. Could I put in a quick pilot to test it and then see what tweaks may need to make it work for my people, or to come to the understanding of, it's probably not the right audience for it, right?
Right, exactly.
But that goes back to, I think, some of the stuff you were saying. I mean, most people, I think, in terms of nonprofits and social entrepreneurs, well, most people, I think, in general, they're typically going to be the most knowledgeable people about their audience and who they are and who their audience is, but that's also not always true, and frequently is, I think, the failure point for a ton of organizations. They may know who they are, but they know nothing about their audience, and they haven't bothered to learn. So obviously there's that component, that getting people to actually be curious about who their clients are, who their customers are, who their audience are, and how do those three things potentially differ, because they can, right? And they can differ a lot around that. And what I typically find is that people are going after the wrong audience for whatever their efforts are, and that's just because they don't know. They think, I guess they think they're just throwing spaghetti at a wall. Something will stick somewhere.
Right.
So I think what you were talking about in terms of how you approach it, that could be a really useful process, I think, for like social media and communications, branding. It's actually, in my other life, it's the process that we use as we provide technology services to nonprofits across the country and outside of the U.S. as well. We actually don't really do any marketing around that. I mean, we may, and I have to admit that I've been saying we may for like 10 years, and we still haven't. But there's like a part of me that wants to start doing marketing because I want to create some package stuff that's just things that we can do and provide to people, and it's not stuff that we have to nurture as much. Okay. But really one of our specialties is in the reason why people sometimes seek us out is that we basically get to learn an organization almost as well as an organizational staff member, right? And in some cases better, because we're getting a broad-based perspective of all of the organization and how all of the pieces come together, so that we can make technology recommendations and technology solutions and kind of create a trajectory for the organization of, this is where you are, it seems like this is where you want to be, and this is kind of what needs to happen, right?
Right.
To that, using their own examples of projects and language and stuff, as you were saying. So, I think getting people to explain what their projects are, what their mission is in their own logic, in their own language, as best as that can be, because sometimes their language, of course, is way too specific for the general market. Like, you'll go into, let's say, a mental health thing, and they're using like language that, unless you're another mental health provider or something like that, you're just like, wait, what was that? What's that acronym? Who's that person?
Exactly. It's that issue of making sure that when people walk away with a strategy or plan, because plans and strategies are completely different to me, that it's in a language that they can understand and digest. And then as it relates to nonprofits, especially small ones, are typically board-run. And board-run.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
As it relates to nonprofits, they're typically board-run or volunteer-run, right? So most of those folks, when you give them like a marketing plan and marketing strategy, they're not all going to understand marketing jargon. They're not going to get it, and those are going to be the people who are implementing that. And when you're writing in a language that most of them just don't get and they don't understand it, that's where you get the bottleneck, right? So that's why I feel like providing them with something and making them a part of the planning process, an intricate part of the planning process, is what is extremely important. And for me, the consultant's job is a guidance piece as far as provide. So yeah, you provide those marketing tips and advice along the way, but you help them understand it and translate it in their way, so that when they leave, it's something that they understand. And that you were saying that a lot of them don't understand their audience and don't know who their audience is. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Sure. Well,
are you seeing that more in the newer organizations, or do you see that even in some of the more advanced organizations, ones that have been around even for 15 years? How often are you seeing that? And so,
I see it fairly darn frequently, and it's not like they don't have any idea of who their logic is that they don't necessarily think too deeply about who their audience is. So let me give you an example. This organization, and I'm not going to name names, right,
okay.
Has been around, 20 plus years at least, right? They do consumer advocacy work, kind of like a Consumer Reports type agency, but more focused in on multilingual and things like that. So their understanding of their audience is pretty much consumers, right? Okay. And I'm like, well, that's technically everybody in the world, right?
Right.
I'm like, there may be a couple random people on some islands that we've never heard of that aren't consumers, but that's just like a very broad stroke type of things. And so when it comes then to thinking about their website or their social media plan, they quickly and rapidly get consumed by the breadth of what they have to do, or they don't understand how to do things in smaller chunks or smaller components because they don't actually know how to break down their audience to that degree. I mean, and sometimes even when it's clear, for them or for others, like we've worked with, like a recreation center. It's just like, well, everybody in so-and-so city, right? That's who we serve. And it's like, yeah, that's good and fine, but it's not like 100% of your city is coming to use your facilities, right? It's like, right. So what are the characteristics of the people who come to use your facility? What are the characteristics of the people who you want to come but aren't currently coming, right?
Right.
And And then also, how does that differ, and how do they differ from who's accessing you online? Because a lot of times that's massively different. It's like, oh, when I go out and give a training, or when I go out to like the local park, it's these type of people. And then if you kind of check your website stats and logs and stuff, and all of a sudden you might see that you're getting a far younger crowd or a far older crowd, or things like that. And so that's kind of like the breaking, I think, between who's your customer, the people who come and use your facilities or they're using your service and stuff like that. Who's your audience? The people who may eventually become customers, but right now they want access to the information and stuff that you're providing online or through social media or other type of channels. And then I guess you also have who's your, what do they call that? For some strange reason, only change makers is coming to my thing, but it's actually the when you have when you break things out into the group of people who matter most to your organization, stakeholders.
Stakeholders, yeah.
Right. So who's your stakeholders, and and those three groupings can be very distinct and different from each other. So that's kind of what I meant.
Okay. So hold on, I'm just writing that down. So I have to skip all the way through this recording to find it, because that's very important. Just writing that down. So I'm just wondering, for the people who, there's going to be some terms for the people who read the article who don't understand, because I had a couple of people ask me, who are social entrepreneurs exactly? What is a social enterprise? Who are social entrepreneurs?
Uh-huh.
Can you explain that?
So I consider a social entrepreneur is someone who wants to do good in the world, and who, but isn't necessarily stuck with the older nonprofit paradigm for it. So it's basically someone who's willing to have a dual bottom line, if that makes sense. I don't want to use a technical definition for it, because there are there are, I think, specific definitions, but for us, what basically is that we want people who want to use their work to actually accomplish more than just their own livelihood in that. So they want to affect their neighborhood. They want to affect their city or state or their community. They want to help defeat some type of societal ill. But at the same time, they want to build something, an organization, a corporation, a business, to some degree. So it can be for-profit, nonprofit, cooperative, one of these hybrid businesses, models that are out there. But basically, I guess the bottom line for me is basically a social entrepreneur is someone who's working for a cause, or doing business, I guess, for social change or social cause. To get to that degree, they're almost always, I consider, a dual bottom line, but some of them have multiple bottom lines. But it's that balancing act of, you're not going to put your profits ahead of your values, and you're not going to necessarily cling to your values more than you are going to, and let go of fiscal responsibility to a degree, right? You kind of like, you're balancing both of those things. So you don't want the deficit of, I don't charge for anything and I have no income stream, right?
Why does that sound familiar?
You basically want ways that you're self-sustainable, even if you can't be 100% self-sustainable. At least that's kind of our value system, I think, with the Social Good Accelerator. We don't actually require our for-profits or nonprofits to be 100% self-sustainable. What we do want is people who are looking to have some level of sustainability that they can control, right?
Okay.
So if it's one funding stream or multiple funding streams that are definitely under their control, as much as like the markets and stuff will allow it to be, right? But that's under their control. They're not beholden to a grant maker or donors or things like that for that funding stream, then that's good. And that could be kind of any percentage of like their income to it. And obviously if you're for-profit, that percentage is going to be much higher than or it needs to be much higher for you than if you're a nonprofit. And if you're cooperative, you actually have like a nice amount of flexibility in terms of like scaling the balance between that as well. So, so that's typically how I think of it. To that degree. I don't want nonprofits to be entirely dependent on grants and other people's money.
Okay.
And I don't want businesses to only think about money.